Have you ever found yourself lying next to someone night after night and still felt completely alone? That kind of loneliness hits differently after 60. It's not about being without someone. It's about realizing you've been with someone for years, maybe even decades, but deep down, you've slowly lost pieces of yourself. And here's the truth many won't say out loud. Growing old with a partner can feel safe, yes. It can look secure on the outside, but on the inside, for many seniors like you and me, it can turn into a slow, silent erosion of freedom, peace, and emotional clarity. That might sound dramatic, but if you've lived it, you know it's not. As we age, we start to crave simplicity, we value stillness, and we realize that emotional noise, those little compromises and unspoken frustrations, begin to weigh more heavily on our hearts than they ever did before. I want to tell you a story. Howard is a friend of mine, 75 years old now, a retired school teacher from Michigan. And for most of his adult life, he did what good men do. He adjusted. He gave up his Saturday mornings for his wife's errands. He watched cooking shows instead of baseball because it made her happy. He even agreed to turn their bedroom into a sewing room for her projects. And you know what? He didn't mind. Not at first, because that's what love looked like to him. Giving, accommodating, being the steady one. But over time, it chipped away at him. Nothing big, nothing obvious. Just little pieces of himself that got tucked away, folded up like old clothes in the attic, until one day he realized he couldn't remember the last time he did something just because he wanted to. Not because it was easier, not because it was polite, but because it was his choice. Then one morning he told me something I'll never forget. He said all I wanted was to drink my coffee in silence. But every morning she turns on that loud morning talk show like it's a concert in the kitchen. That one moment, that one small sound, became the symbol of everything he'd lost. The quiet he never claimed, the peace he had never prioritized. And that's when it hit me. Compromise, the thing we were taught makes a relationship strong, can also become the very thing that drains our strength in old age. When you're young, you compromise to build something together. You give a little, take a little. But when you're older, when your joints hurt and your energy dips and your sleep matters more than ever, you don't want to negotiate anymore. You want peace, you need it, and if you don't get it, the emotional weight builds. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It pulls at your spirit like gravity. You start waking up tired, not just from sleep, but from the mental load of constantly adjusting who you are to make someone else feel better. And here's the kicker. Most people don't even realize they're doing it. We're conditioned to see compromise as noble, as necessary, but the truth is, after 60, compromise starts costing more than it gives, and the emotional toll can manifest physically, stress, anxiety, fatigue, even illness. Studies from the Journal of Gerontology confirm this. They've shown that older adults in strained emotional partnerships report higher levels of chronic fatigue and emotional burnout than those who live alone. Now, I'm not saying love is bad. I'm not saying companionship is wrong. But what I am saying, and what Elderly Reflections is all about, is this. You need to examine what your life feels like when no one is watching. Is your relationship bringing you more joy than stress? Is it making you feel alive? Or is it asking you to shrink yourself day after day for the sake of keeping things smooth? You've spent decades being patient, being responsible, being the glue that held everything together. Isn't it time you gave yourself permission to stop carrying the load? That brings me to the second truth, and it's a hard one for a lot of us to admit. It's the quiet, creeping loss of independence that happens in almost every relationship, especially as we get older. You see, when you're 30, it feels good to make plans with someone. You dream together, you compromise for a future. But when you're 70, you've already done the dreaming. Now it's about living. And yet so many of us are still tied to someone else's calendar, someone else's preferences, someone else's expectations. And over time, we stop realizing how much of our independence we've given up just to keep the routine alive. Let me tell you about Daniel. He's 79, a widower from Oregon. He was married for over 50 years. He loved his wife deeply. They built a beautiful life together. 3 kids, a house they paid off, yearly camping trips, Christmas dinners that could feed the whole block. But when she passed away, something happened. After the grief, after the loneliness, came something unexpected. Clarity. He realized he didn't actually know how to make decisions for himself anymore. He had no idea what music he liked. He hadn't cooked for himself in years. He didn't even know what kind of coffee he preferred, because she always brewed it. So he started experimenting. Jazz records, avocado toast, morning walks with no particular destination. It was awkward at first, but then it became joyful. It became liberating. He told me for the first time in my life, I wasn't compromising. I was discovering. And that right there, that's what most of us miss. Because when you're in a relationship for decades, even a loving one, your identity becomes a shared identity. Your opinions blend, your preferences blur, your schedule gets negotiated, and suddenly you're not living your life, you're co-managing one. Now, don't get me wrong. There's beauty in sharing life with someone. But independence, that sacred, powerful freedom to choose what you want, when you want, without having to explain or justify it, is something most seniors don't even realize they've lost. Until it's gone, and when they do regain it, it's like taking a deep breath after being underwater for years. We're told that being single in old age means being lonely, but that's a myth. What it often means is you finally get to be in a relationship with yourself. And that relationship, when nurtured with respect, joy, and freedom, can be the most peaceful one of all. But before we go, if this conversation has stirred something inside you, maybe a quiet truth, maybe a memory you've pushed aside, I want you to do one small thing. Subscribe to this channel, Elderly Reflections, and hit that bell icon. Not because I'm asking, but because I believe the next chapter of your life deserves voices that speak to your soul, not just your habits. You deserve content that reflects your journey, your struggles, your insights, your freedom. And that's what we do here. Every video, every week, let's talk about emotional exhaustion. Now, I know that might sound like something out of a self-help book, but stay with me, because this is real. This is the silent burnout that comes from years, sometimes decades, of constant compromise, emotional caretaking, and unspoken resentment. It's when you find yourself sighing for no reason, staring out the window longer than usual, or feeling inexplicably drained just from deciding what to make for lunch. It's not depression, it's not illness. It's the weight of never fully getting to rest. Not physically, but emotionally. Let me share another story. This one is about Leonard. He's 76, used to be a radio technician. Soft-spoken man, kind to the bone. He was married for over 50 years, and he adored his wife. But every day for decades, Leonard made small decisions that weren't really his. He went to restaurants she liked. He missed trips because she was nervous about flying. He watched TV shows he had no interest in, but he stayed. Now, none of this was dramatic. There were no fights, no abuse, no loud arguments. But over time, Leonard began to fade. Not his body, but his spark. He started forgetting why he loved music. He lost interest in fishing. He couldn't remember the last time he'd made a spontaneous decision. And after his wife passed and the fog of grief lifted, something unexpected happened. He felt relief. Not joy, not celebration, just relief. A deep, guilty exhale. Because for the first time in his life, he didn't have to ask anyone how they felt about his choices. He could just be. Now, if you've never felt this, you might not understand. But if you have, if there's even a small part of you that recognizes this feeling, I want to tell you something that no one probably ever told you. It's okay. It's okay to feel relief. It doesn't mean you didn't love them. It means you lost yourself and now you're finally coming home. Emotional exhaustion in relationships isn't always about conflict. It's often about caretaking, about managing someone else's emotions while quietly ignoring your own. And when you're over 60, 70, even 80, your emotional bandwidth shrinks. What you could tolerate at 40 now feels unbearable. Because you've lived long enough to know that peace is precious, and compromising every day, even in small ways, chips away at that peace. So many seniors wake up in their later years and realize, I don't have the energy to carry someone else's moods anymore. I don't want to mediate, explain, soothe, or adjust. I just want to be. That's not selfish. That's clarity. That's elderly wisdom. And that wisdom tells us peace in your final chapters is not optional. It's essential. Which brings us to something even heavier, the burden of caregiving. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of caregiving you do when you help someone open a jar or reach for a can on the top shelf. I'm talking about full-time emotional, physical, and medical support that often falls, silently and without question, on the shoulders of the healthier spouse. Most people don't talk about this. It's taboo to say out loud that caring for the person you love is exhausting, but I'm going to say it. Sometimes love becomes obligation, and sometimes that obligation ruins your health too. Let me introduce you to James. He was 78 when his wife began showing signs of early Alzheimer's. At first it was just confusion. misplaced keys, repeating questions. But within 2 years, James went from husband to full-time caretaker. He bathed her. He cooked every meal. He changed soiled sheets. He reminded her who he was every single morning. And no one helped. His adult children were busy with work. His friends stopped calling. And his wife, the woman he loved, no longer recognized him. James never complained, not once. But by the 3rd year, he had lost 20 pounds. He wasn't sleeping. His blood pressure spiked. He developed ulcers. The doctor told him that if he didn't take care of himself, he wouldn't outlive her. And that's when it hit him. In trying to love her through her decline, he had completely abandoned his own health. Now hear me clearly, I am not saying we shouldn't care for our partners, but I am saying this. No one tells you how dangerous it is to carry the weight of someone else's failing health in your own aging body. And no one prepares you for the loneliness of being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who never breaks. Until one day you do. Science backs us up. Studies from the National Institute on Aging show that elderly caregivers are at significantly higher risk of depression, heart disease, and even premature death. Why? Because stress is silent. It builds, it hardens your arteries, it weakens your immune system, and it isolates you because the world assumes you're doing fine if you're quiet. But inside you're breaking. What's even more painful is that many seniors who become caregivers do so out of love, but end up feeling trapped by guilt, trapped by duty, trapped by fear. And the worst part? When their partner finally passes, they're often so worn down, emotionally, mentally, physically, that they can't even enjoy the freedom they now have. That's not a life, that's survival. Let's talk about money. Not in the greedy sense, not in the who owns what kind of way, but in the real, grounded, practical sense. Because after 60, especially after retirement, money isn't just money anymore, it's peace, it's security. It's your buffer against illness, your ticket to freedom, your protection from having to rely on anyone else. And when you share your life with a partner, especially later in life, your money becomes their business. Your emergencies become your expenses. Their habits, good or bad, become your reality. Let me tell you about Robert, 81 now, lives in Arizona. He was widowed for over a decade. They moved in together after 6 months, and everything seemed fine at first. But slowly, little things started adding up. She needed help with medical bills. Her adult son had legal issues and came asking for money. Her car broke down. Robert paid for the repairs, and before he knew it, he was dipping into his savings just to keep things stable. Now, none of it felt dramatic. No one was stealing. No one was abusive. But Robert woke up one day and realized his financial freedom had quietly disappeared. He had given it away, piece by piece, in the name of companionship. And the hardest part? He didn't even blame her. He blamed himself. Because he'd assumed that at his age, love would be simple, that it wouldn't cost him anything more than his time, but it did. It cost him his independence. And that's a price many seniors are quietly paying, simply because no one warned them. Here's what we need to understand. Late-life relationships come with real financial risk, not just in terms of money lost, but in terms of control lost. And control at our age is everything. It's the difference between saying, I want this, and I have no choice. It's the difference between living on your terms and quietly adjusting to someone else's limitations. Financial strain doesn't always look like bankruptcy. Sometimes it just looks like anxiety every time a bill comes in. Sometimes it's resentment that builds quietly because you can't spend your own money without checking in first. Sometimes it's the guilt of watching your hard-earned savings go towards someone else's adult children, someone else's emergencies. And it's not just money, it's also the emotional toll. The final reason we're here. You see, people assume that growing old with someone means you'll never feel lonely. But I've learned something from the men and women I've met, from the stories shared on Elderly Reflections, from my own experiences. And it's this: being in the wrong relationship is lonelier than being alone. Because at least when you're alone, you're free. Free to think your own thoughts. Free to wake when you want. Free to feel without filtering everything through another person's lens. When you're in a relationship that no longer feeds you, that no longer lifts you or respects your space, what you have isn't love, it's habit. And habit can be comforting, but it can also be a cage. Take Carol, 74, Florida, married for 45 years. Her husband wasn't cruel, but he was dismissive. Dismissed her opinions, laughed off her interests, controlled the finances, made decisions without her. She stayed because it was familiar, because starting over at 70 seemed absurd. But she told me, and I'll never forget this, I've never felt more invisible in my life than I do sitting next to a man I've shared everything with. That's not companionship, That's silent erasure. And too many seniors are living that story right now. Smiling in photos, laughing at the right times, but inside, empty, numb, resigned. You deserve more than that. You deserve joy, not just routine. You deserve peace, not just someone to share the mortgage with. And if being single gives you back those things, then being single might not be lonely at all. It might be the greatest act of love you've ever shown yourself. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying everyone should leave their relationships. I'm saying this and only this. If your relationship costs you more than it gives, if it drains more than it fills, if you feel smaller, sadder, or stuck because of it, then it's okay to question it and it's okay to walk away. Because the later years of life should not be filled with silent suffering, emotional tiptoeing, or financial fear. They should be filled with clarity, softness, laughter, and choice. They should feel like yours. That's what elderly reflection stands for. Not bitterness, not loneliness, but freedom, wisdom, power, peace. We believe the elderly aren't just fading, and with that ripening comes the right to choose your own joy. So let me ask you this. Are you staying in something out of love or out of fear? Are you holding on because it feels good or because letting go feels too hard? Are you really still in love or just afraid of being alone? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary ones because the answers shape the final chapter of your story, and that chapter deserves to be written with intention, not by default. If this video spoke to you, if even one line echoed something you've quietly thought but never said, I invite you to do 3 simple things. First, click that like button. Not for me, but to help more people find this message. Second, subscribe to Elderly Reflections, because we're just getting started. Every week we explore the real, raw, emotional truths of aging. The regrets, the beauty, the resilience, and the silent strength. And third, and this is the most important, leave a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from? Are you in Texas, New York, somewhere across the ocean? I want to know, I want to hear from you. Because when you share your story, you remind someone else that they're not alone.